The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.
One thing that I mentioned Pearl being maybe my favorite product, and the reason I said maybe my favorite product is we have another product that's amazing that somewhat neutralizes that concern for people, and that's SolarInsure. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that product, but what SolarInsure does is it's another third party, and they provide they extend the warranties, the manufacturer's warranties out to 30 years.
Are you speeding the energy transition? Here at the Clean Power Hour, our hosts Tim Montague and John Weaver bring you the best in solar, batteries, and clean technologies every week. Want to go deeper into decarbonization? We do too. We're here to help you understand and command the commercial, residential, and utility solar, wind, and storage industries. So let's get to it. Together we can speed the energy transition.
Today on the Clean Power Hour, the New Mexico solar market. New Mexico is near and dear to my heart. As many of my listeners know, I grew up in Albuquerque. I'm a Midwesterner by birth. I was born in Indiana, but I spent 12 lovely years in Albuquerque, and my father was a professor at UNM Albuquerque. So that's really where I got my exposure to the solar industry, was at the Energy Fair at UNM in 1975. But my guest today is a veteran of the solar industry, and he runs a wonderful EPC called the New Mexico Solar Group. His name is Nick Kadlec. He is the CEO. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Thank you, Tim. Great to hear your background about, from New Mexico and where you basically got your start in New Mexico at that UNM fair. I went to UNM, got both my degrees from UNM, born and raised in New Mexico. And that's also where I learned to love solar, getting solar in my own house about 10 years ago. And so definitely love to be with another, not New Mexican, but still.
Yeah, I can't call myself a New Mexican. And I've frankly, I've lost most of my connection to the state, but I have great stories and hopefully some new friends. Let's get into it, though. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you come to New Mexico Solar Group?
Sure.
And then we'll dive into what you guys are all about. You're a very unique company, so I look forward to bringing this to our audience.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so a little bit of my background. I probably don't have a traditional path to solar, although what I found is a lot of people in solar don't have a traditional path. With it being somewhat of a newer industry, a lot of people have changed professions going into solar. But for me, what it was is I had a completely different career that I actually really enjoyed. I was a school counselor for about 13 years. Liked that job, loved it for the most part. Every job has things you don't like about it, but I loved it. But what happened is in 2013, I got my own solar system. And my undergrad degree was in environmental science. So there's always a pull for me in doing, something good for the environment. That's how I originally saw myself going before I went into the school counseling domain. For my own home, I looked into it, I think around 2010. It was still pretty expensive. I wanted to do it, but had a young family, couldn't afford maybe a little higher bills, so decided to put it off. But by 2013, I looked into it again, and it was like, we're going to save money and it's good for the environment. And it was just a no-brainer product for me. So I was really excited to go solar for myself. Went solar, had a really good experience with it. And kind of from there, I wouldn't stop talking to other people about solar. So as I mentioned, I was a school counselor. Education can be a great field, but it's not known to be a great paying field. So I waited tables, even since all throughout college. And even once I became a school counselor, I would wait tables. And in the summers, evenings, weekends. So I'm at my waiting tables jobs at the 66 Diners, which is a great 50s diner down in downtown Albuquerque. I don't know if you ever went there, but it's a great place. They're still open too. So give them a plug.
What restaurant is that?
The 66 Diner.
Oh, no, I haven't been there.
Central. Yeah. So if anyone's traveling through New Mexico, it's a great place to go get a burger and shake and all that. So I worked there for about 15 years.
Oh,
Again,
wow.
through college, while I was a school counselor.
Yep.
And I was waiting tables one night, and I was talking to, I remember I was actually, it was after the shift was done. I was talking to my general manager there, and I was telling him for the umpteenth time about how he should go solar. And and I remember specifically, he said, you should sell solar panels, and I remember he planted that seed. I didn't go out and get a job the next day, but I still remember that conversation. And I don't know if it was a month or two later, but I did go get a job. Unfortunately, I replaced the job waiting table. So he kind of, I don't know if he's trying to push me out the door, but it worked if he was, but I know he wasn't. But
the restaurant I do remember is called the Frontier, which is right by campus. And we called it the Plastic Fantastic. I'm not sure why my family called it that. Was that a nickname for that restaurant? But they had wonderful sweet rolls. That's how I remember the Frontier.
Yeah, there's sweet rolls, their cinnamon rolls are great. And yeah, they're just up the road from the diner, right? So maybe not even a mile up the road, I would say. But yeah, that's a great place. That's a great hangout too. But yeah, so I switched to selling solar on the weekends and evenings. Started with a national company. They were actually the only ones that would give me a shot. Everyone wanted me to have experience selling, and I didn't. I thought I would tell them, I remember I have good customer service experience. I've waited tables for 15 years, but they wanted a proven track record of selling. So a national company gave me a shot. It was called Zing. They since merged with Vision to become Ion Solar, and they're still around. But that was who I had my first job selling solar with. Did that for about 6 months with them. And basically, my end goal was to sell for a local company. It just was more aligned with the way I wanted to do things and the customer service and all that. So just by happenstance, my sister she's a mortgage officer, and she had just switched to a new mortgage company. And just by coincidence, the owner and founder of New Mexico Solar was getting his mortgage license so that he could do a mortgage product that wrapped solar into mortgages. The sad thing is that product never got off the ground, but the good thing is it got me connected to him, because when my sister mentioned, he brought up that he had a solar company, and my sister mentioned, well, my brother sells solar, but he's kind of looking to change companies, and she got us connected. And so I started selling for NM Solar Group in end of 2016, and basically worked my way up. I was still doing school counseling part-time. I was doing both jobs for about 2.5, 3 years. And eventually I made the full jump. I went from sales rep with the Mexico Solar Group to sales manager. And then in the summer of 2018, Ryan came to me and he said, hey, I'm looking at selling the company, but not to somebody else, to you guys as an ESOP. And he asked me if I wanted to be the CEO. And my first gut reaction instinct was like, no, I can't do that. I'm right now just trying to get my legs under me as far as a sales manager. You'll have to talk to somebody else about being the CEO, but thank you, of course. Had more time to think about it. That was kind of towards the beginning of the summer of 2018. By the end of the summer, I had thought about it more. He had thought about it more. I don't know who he talked to or didn't talk to, but he came back to me again at the end of the summer and said, hey, I really think, we'd already gone further down the path of the company being sold to us. And he said, I really think that you should be the CEO, and I really want you to. And so I actually, again, I'd had more time to think about it, realized I'd had more time to learn about employee ownership, most importantly, and how awesome that was, and realized the opportunity that we were about to have as a company, and see the opportunity that I had to try to lead that. And the second time around, I said, yeah, I'll go for it. And what we did is we arranged kind of a two-way trial, a 6-month period where I was interim COO for 3 months, and then interim CEO for 3 months. Which all culminated in May of 2019 with me becoming the CEO of NM Solar Group. And at that point, we'd already been employee owned for about 6 months.
I'm a huge fan of ESOPs. For anyone who doesn't know, if you want to keep a company in a location, an ESOP is a great way to do that, because then the employees have a vested interest in seeing the company flourish, and they don't want to go anywhere else. They've carved out a life in a place, and it's not that you can't expand into other markets, but what tends to happen is a company will get acquired, and then they'll move the HQ to some other place, and then it's a totally different company. And it's just a great way to empower employees to have skin in the game. You're going to get you're going to get better, harder work out of your employees if they have that kind of skin in the game. And there's just no buts about it. So
definitely. And I know that was his, if I didn't mention his name already, I should have. Ryan Wallace was our owner and founder of the company. And that was one of his big pushes and reasons for doing for selling to the employees was his mentality was the employees helped me build this. I'd like to give it to them and allow them the chance to help it flourish and get the rewards that come with employee ownership versus sell it to somebody else and who knows what they do with it, right? He's gonna successfully sell a company and get the rewards from that. But one way you allow the employees to get those rewards, employees that built it, and the other way it's who knows what happens, right? They could end up being a really great situation for the employees. It could be something where things change after the ownership, which often happens, right? So we always have appreciated that he did that for us, sold it to us, and we've tried to make him proud with how we've run the company and what we've done so far the last almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years this May here. So,
yeah, well, that was very thoughtful of him.
Yep.
Says a lot about him. And but let's talk about New Mexico Solar Group. New Mexico is a large state with lots of solar resources, but a small population. I think
right.
the whole state has, 1.5 million, something like that. And
it's somewhere in the high twos, I believe now. Okay. But it's compared to the acreage, right? Definitely it's low population.
But it has a burgeoning community solar market now. I think you're in the pilot phase still, but the writing is on the wall that there'll be a robust community solar market, which frankly everyone in solar loves community solar because it just democratizes the access to solar. You don't have to own a home. You don't have to have a sunny roof. You could live in an apartment. You could not want to install solar on your building or whatever, right? Anyone can participate. In certain jurisdictions, it is jurisdictional, generally speaking. But so let's talk about the market, though. What is the status of the New Mexico solar market? You guys work in residential, commercial, and now community solar.
Yeah.
But what's going on in the solar world in New Mexico? And then give us a little, bit of the scope of your operation.
Sure. So market's great. And like you said, we are in residential, commercial, and just getting into community solar. So we're about 90% residential, 10% commercial, although we've been increasing year over year our commercial footprint. And then as far as the community, they're about to, in about a week here, they're going to let everyone know the finalists. And we have co-bid with another company out of Colorado named Pivot. They're a great company, great partner. And we're hoping to get some sites with them for the community solar. And just going back to that real quick, you mentioned everyone loves community solar, and I'm definitely in that boat. One of the things that drove me nuts when I first started selling solar was when people would want to go solar, but they couldn't, right? They didn't own their home. Obviously, I was part of what I did is door knocking. That was part of our model, and still is part of our model. And when you knock on someone's door and they're not the owner, right? They rent, right? So they're out, right? Or they're interested, but they have, they don't have great credit. It would always drive me nuts when I couldn't help someone go solar that wanted to go solar. So community solar is a great solution for that, right? And it's a low, not even low cost. I can say low cost. It saves people no risk. The contracts are really short for it as well, and they can have access to renewable energy. So it really does, like I said, democratize and brings solar to anyone who really wants to get it. So love community solar. We're really excited to see what happens in that area. It's a pilot program, so we need it to go well, and I know we have a really committed group of solar professionals in New Mexico, local companies, local leaders of our local companies. NMRIA was really instrumental in helping getting that legislation passed, and that's the Renewable Energy Industry Association of New Mexico. So it had actually they've been trying to pass that for about 20 years. And so it was great to see that finally get passed, and they've really helped work. And there's been subcommittees that have worked with the state on getting the rules written in a way that benefits everyone. So we're really excited to see it happen. Again, they're about to do the rewards in about 10 days here, and that's going to be exciting. It's 200 megawatts of solar over the next 3 years. It's a pilot program, so if it goes well, we'll be able to, the sky's the limit on what we can do with community solar.
And those 200 megawatts, are those 2 megawatt projects, or what's the scale project?
The largest they can be is 5 megawatts. And from everything we've seen, and even the ones we bid on, all of them are around the 5 megawatts. So there might be some smaller ones that get awarded that aren't quite 5 megawatts, but for the most part, it's going to be about 45 megawatt projects.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're and you mentioned the areas. It's basically it's going to be in the three major utilities here, which is PNM, Xcel, and El Paso Electric, in those areas. So we'll work on getting it into some of the co-op areas. As of now, they had to opt in, but I think after the pilot program and seeing how that goes, I think we'll have more opportunity around in the co-op areas as well.
Yeah, very cool. And
then go ahead.
You have several offices around the state, so you cover the entire state of New Mexico, which is amazing because it's a big state. Talk a little bit about that, and I'm very curious about that split 90-10 residential commercial. I imagine that means the roots of the company were you were a pure residential company when you started.
Yeah, so pure residential, and we've just been, slowly getting our foot more in that door for commercial, and so basically it helps diversify. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunity in commercial, but we have to build up, slowly over time, our capacity, our abilities, and we did just land last year. We're actually just finishing putting the final touches on them, getting them interconnected here. A couple of big dairies out in Clovis, New Mexico, so that was pretty exciting. One for about 300 kilowatts and change, and then another for a little over 700 kilowatts. So together they were a megawatt of solar. But we've done some other really cool projects. Les Combs is a local winery, and they also have restaurants around the state as well. And so we did a 272 kilowatt job down in Deming, New Mexico for their winery, and we're currently doing the actual vineyards in Lordsburg, New Mexico. So it's one of their goals to go sustainable company wide, and we're helping them do that. We've got some quotes for some of their restaurants as well, where it makes sense. So, but yeah, we've been inching our way into commercial as we can build up our capacity and show businesses, hey, yeah, we've done this, we can do it, and we can do it for you. So, but yeah, it is 90% residential. We're planning on getting further into the commercial, but residential is our bread and butter, and it's going to continue to be our main area. And so we did start in Albuquerque, and that was in 2015. I don't think I gave you that date earlier, but we actually moved down to southern New Mexico, where we saw a huge demand down there, and that was actually Ryan Wallace. He saw huge demand. We actually opened our first building in southern New Mexico in Alamogordo in 2017, and we serviced kind of the Las Cruces area. It's our next biggest city down in the south, in Alamogordo and kind of the surrounding small towns of that area. And then about a year later, 2018, we went into the El Paso market, which I don't think I've mentioned yet before. We're actually in El Paso, Texas as well. But we also went into eastern New Mexico at the end of 2018. And we have an office in Roswell as well. So for the Southeast, the only area of the state that we don't have a big presence in, we don't have any buildings in, is the northern part of the state. We'll do installs up in the northern part of the state, but they're just now opening up, changing some of their policies to be more favorable to solar up in the Farmington area. And so we'll be getting our foot in the door there as well, but we'll do installs up there. We just don't have a big presence as far as like an office and operations out of a local area there, but that'll come soon, I'm sure.
Alamogordo, for anyone who doesn't know, is famous because of the Trinity test and White Sands. So there's a history with the nuclear industry there in southern New Mexico. And you can visit a museum and see models of the very first atomic bombs. But so I'm curious, how does residential solar, or commercial for that matter, maybe we could talk about both, pencil in New Mexico? One of the challenges with solar is how quickly does it pay back for a consumer who's going to invest? And that is different depending on the price of power and the incentives like the ITC, right? We have a 30% investment tax credit, which is a great booster. But in general, what do you find in the New Mexico market in terms of a payback period, and what could the average consumer save with a residential solar system?
Yeah, and there's so many variables that go into that on the residential side and the commercial side. But I would say if you want a range, it's probably 7 to 12 years return on investment. And of course, a lot of our customers get, that return on investment is typically a cash mechanism there, but a lot of our customers get loans. And basically the loan amount for a solar loan is less than their power bill. So there's savings right away. But if you're looking at a purely cash return on investment, anywhere from 7 to 10 years. And the things that are going to change that are just the electric company's policy as far as how the net metering works. Our biggest electric company in the state, P&M, they have a really good net metering policy. It's dollar for dollar, kilowatt for kilowatt. And they also have a 3-tiered system where the more you use, the more they charge you as you go through the tiers. So for someone who has really high usage, they're gonna save a lot more because solar's gonna help them. If they go 100%, that saves them the most. But it can also keep them out of that second and third tier where they're paying a lot more per kilowatt hour. And so it's really the return on investment and how quickly you save and how much you save really depends on your electric company, their net metering policies, and also how much you use. But again, it runs the gamut.
Sure.
It saves for almost everyone. And but it's one of the things we do when we meet with someone is we educate them on, here's what you could save. It's very rare that someone. I did have a neighbor. My neighbor next to my house when I first went solar, and her bill was only $30 a month. And I remember when I met with her, it was like, you're not going to save. It would have to just be for environmental purposes, right? And so, but other than those really rare circumstances with really low usage, and then of course, if people can utilize the tax credit or not, will change the calculus and change how it pencils out. If they don't have enough taxable income, if they're not going to be eligible to use the tax credits, that's going to slow down the return on investment for sure, and make the savings less. But I would say average range 7 to 12 years on return on investment.
And I think that's fairly typical. That's certainly the range, here in Illinois. It can be a little shorter, but we have renewable energy credits. Are there any other incentives in New Mexico besides net metering? It's great to have a good retail net metering law, really a foundation. If you don't have net metering, you probably don't have a robust solar market. Yeah. You see all the hoopla about NEM 3.0 in California, where they're devaluing net metering by 75%. And so that really does hurt the ROI when you can only get quote unquote wholesale value, because it's a vastly different value that you then get for solar electrons. And unfortunately, as markets mature, the rules around net metering tend to get more restrictive. And that's written into many places, like here in Illinois. We have full retail net metering for the moment, but once we reach our 5% of grid power with solar, then it starts to step down, and it does then slow the payback. But are there any other incentives besides net metering and the federal incentives, which of course are also very generous right now?
Yeah, so we have a state incentive that got repassed. It had been passed for about 10 years, but it expired in 2016 and it got repassed in 2020. And that's a great incentive. It's 10%. It was originally for the first, just the first year, it was similar to the federal tax credit, in that you had to have the tax liability to recoup it. They did change it in the it's actually last year. So for 2 years, it was that way. In 2022, the legislative session of last year, they changed it to where it acts as a credit if you can use it as a credit, but if you can't, you can basically get it as a rebate. So they made it to where it's basically people that can't qualify for it as a credit can still get it, which is great. And then they also increased the pot of money from 8 million to 12 million last year, so to 12 million. So it's 12 million. It is a first come, first served basis. We're working on getting that to where it can roll over from 1 year to the next. But it's a great incentive as far as 10%. If you can't get it as a credit, you can get it as a rebate. And it's $12 million pot each year. So it's a good amount of money to help incentivize people to go solar for sure.
Very cool. You offer a variety of services. I'm just looking at your website. Check out NewMexicoSolarGroup.com. And I want to talk about some of this stuff, though. You've got something called Pearl certification. Yeah. And You've got financing options. We should talk a little bit about that. That's a very hot topic in especially residential solar, because as you mentioned, consumers are generally going to want some assistance to make the purchase. And but then you also mentioned monitoring systems, Tesla Powerwall, so batteries, and EV charging stations. What exactly is Pearl certification? I'm not familiar at all with that.
It's possibly my favorite product that I've run across. And it's because it has a personal story in my past that made me so excited when it came out as a product. So that first summer when I sold about 12 systems with that first company I was with, and one of them, I think it was my third or fourth system, was to a friend of mine who I went to high school with. We'd kept in contact. So I sold him a system, and one of the things in the basically that the company that Zing, they had a little packet that talked about, walked people through the savings and all this stuff. And it cited this study that was it had a bunch of different entities. And I remember being really excited about it, but it was NREL and our own New Mexico Sandia Labs participated in it. A bunch of colleges participated in it, but it was a longitudinal study about the value that solar added to people's homes. And I remember it was 22,000 homes, 18,000 did not have solar, 4,000 had solar. And I don't remember, I might flip these numbers, but it was a 12-year study over 8 states or an 8-year study over 12 states. But whatever it was, it basically, if I remember the details, it ended up saying around a 4 kilowatt system would add about $15,000 to your typical home. And so we use this, and I use this, and all the people I talk to, hey, this should add to your home. This is what this study says. And so I was pretty devastated when about a year later, my friend called me up and he was selling his home, and him and his wife were moving. It was kind of an unexpected move. They hadn't anticipated moving so quickly, but he said, hey, my realtor's saying that, and the appraiser is saying that we're only going to get about $3,000. That's all the solar's added. And I know you'd mentioned this much higher amount. And when I mentioned that, I believed it. I believed you'd get something around that, right?
Yeah.
So that was pretty. I remember at that time I was already the sales manager at NM Solar Group, and after I got that call and he told me about that experience, I do remember instantly the next day when we had our sales meeting with our sales guys, I said, "Hey guys," and that was something I shared with that sales team. Hey, you can point people towards this study, and so I said, "Hey, that study's there, but we make sure that you tell people." It's not a guarantee you're going to get that. It's possible they're going to get less. I mean, my friend just told me he got a lot less. So, you can reference that study, but it's really important to put the proper context around it, that it's not a guarantee. But what really bothered me was that he got a lot less for his solar, right? Than it really should have been valued at. And it was like, and so what it came down to is, and it's in newer markets where there's not a lot of solar, and I'm not from the real estate background, but I know enough to know that when they're doing appraisals, they'll look for comps and the comparable homes with similar features, similar square footage.
Sure.
One of the issues is there's not, if you're in a market that's kind of newer, there's not a lot of comps that have sold with solar. And so appraisers can really struggle to value solar correctly. And when they're not sure about how to value it, they typically undervalue it. And so that's happened a lot in New Mexico. So about 3 years ago, it was the summer of 2020, a guy, John Blattner, he was with Pearl certification, and he reached out to me to tell me about this product that Pearl had, which is Pearl. Basically, they're a third party. They do certificates for green features in homes. I think they have, I can't remember if it's 17 or 27 green features that they do certificates for. We only use one of them, which is for solar. So, but the way it works is they only work with certain companies. They vet your company, and they decide if they'll provide certifications or certificates for your company and the products that your company installs. And what they do is they'll give each one of our, at the end of the month, we take all of our installs, we take all the data from our installs, we send it over to Pearl, and they developed this certificate. The really great thing is they're a third party, but they developed the certificate with industry and governmental and industry, reputable governmental and industry entities. So just a few examples, the National Association of Realtors, the Appraisal Institute, Energy Star, Department of Energy, they worked with those entities to develop their certificates, and including their solar certificate. And what they do is they provide a certificate that gives you a range of values that your solar should be appraised at. And it's based on that specific system specifications, the panels that were used, the inverters that were used, the estimated production. And because basically we send all our information about that system over to them, and they give our customers a certificate that gives a range of values, a low, a medium, and an expected value. And it doesn't guarantee it. And we're really careful to tell our customers this doesn't guarantee you'll get this value. But what it does is it provides the framework for an appraiser to appraise it at the correct value. And what we have found over the last 3 years that we've been using them is anytime that our customers have used that certificate, and sometimes it's taken an extra call to someone at Pearl, they're really great with supporting the end user as well as the company that gets the certificates. But anytime that's been used, people have gotten the value of their solar, sometimes right at where the value minus the tax credit. We've had a few instances where they get the value beyond the tax credit, and it's always been in that range of values that they give. And it's a huge difference from the $3,000. My friend's system was about a $20,000 system that he paid. And so, even based on that, and I remember his was about a 5 kilowatt system. So, based on that study, he should have got somewhere between 14 and 17,000 or so, and he got 3,000, right? I'm confident with the Pro certificate, he would have got that 17 to 20,000. So it helps people get, if they refi or sell their home, it helps give them a mechanism to get the value of the solar that it's really worth.
The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 three-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes three-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more. Yeah. So the analogy I think of is Kelley Blue Book for automobiles. And this is a Kelley Blue Book for solar, which I did not know existed. So this is a wonderful thing. It sounds like a great platform and way to give consumers, some assurance that they're going to get the real value of this solar project, because it becomes part of the home. It's it's adding tremendous value, perhaps $1,000 a year worth of savings to a homeowner, and so you really do want to get that value. So that's great.
Yeah,
Lovely.
I'd never thought of that analogy. I love the Kelley Blue Book analogy, right? Especially because people know that pretty well, right? And that's a great analogy. Yeah.
And so let's talk about some other aspects of the company, and you're partial to certain technologies. I see you mentioned SolarEdge inverters, as well as a microinverter manufacturer, but when you've now been in solar for what, 7-8 years, and so you've seen the market mature. Is it getting easier to sell solar now that solar's in the news a lot more? And you've also seen a substantive reduction in the cost per watt over that time, maybe 75 or 80% even. But what is the company experiencing? I'm just curious, like in general with consumers, and we should also talk about commercial, because it is a special animal. I'm thrilled that you're working in commercial. That's more my bailiwick and history in the solar industry. But what is the general reception that solar gets in let's just say Albuquerque, in a big market in New Mexico?
Definitely overall, big picture, it's getting easier. Solar has a contagion effect. And when I mentioned 7 or 8 years ago, it was about 7.5 years ago that I started. Well, actually 2016. So exactly 7 years ago. It was, maybe 1 or 2 homes in the neighborhood would have it, right? 2 or 3 maybe, right? Now it's like at least 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 on each street. We actually have some communities in our southern market where the whole block has solar up and down, and like 80% of it is NM Solar Group, which we love, of course. But it's got its contagion effect. I think at first people weren't sure about it. I wasn't even sure, but when I first got a quote and got it, I wasn't positive it was going to work. I thought this seems like it makes sense. It seems like it's going to be, I was sure it was going to be good for the environment, but it seems like it's going to save you money until you really get it installed and start seeing those monthly savings on your bill, and that the system works and it does what it's supposed to. I think that as more and more people have adopted it and they talk to their family and friends about it, and more people see it on their neighbors' homes, it definitely has a contagion effect. So I think it's gotten easier. It's more prevalent. We've had a few, and then of course costs have come down. We did have basically costs for the first time in really ever in solar about 2 years ago. They did start to go up, right, with the supply chain issues. We're starting to see them subside again now, but the cost did briefly go up for a little bit there, and we're gradually coming down. So there was a little headwinds there. But overall, yeah, it's become easier and easier to sell. And then we've been impacted a little bit by the interest rates and the lending products getting a little tougher recently, with the interest rates going up starting last May. And it seems like that's kind of at the peak, and it's going to start easing. And we've had to make an adjustment there. It's affected our sales a little bit because we do have most of our customers do use a lending product. A lot of customers use cash, but a lot of them use a lending product. And with those interest rates going up, it's impacted how it pencils out. But the great thing is it still saves people a lot. And even though the lending products have got more expensive when you factor in the interest rates and some of the fees there, all the while inflation's happening with the electric companies as well, right? It increases everywhere. So it's still a great product. We're actually seeing it's still a ton of interest. And then just jumping into the commercial that you mentioned, yeah, the other thing, and you asked earlier if there's other incentives. Commercial has this, it's a whole different beast as far as in a good way. The incentives a little more complicated, but there's accelerated depreciation incentives that can really help a commercial project pencil out a lot better. And then a huge thing that got passed as part of the IRA legislation that got passed last July is the REAP grant. It was already in place. It was where you could get it's a federal program, and you could get 25% of your system costs paid for by the federal government. And you have to apply for it, and they have to have the funds for it. But one of the things that happened with the IRA is they increased that to anywhere from 40 to 50% of your project costs can be covered. And the other thing is they increased the pot of money, and it goes down gradually over the years. But initially, it goes up about 4 or 5 times as much funds for those projects, and then it gradually goes down over time. So commercial, especially in rural areas, is just booming. We're actually seeing a ton of interest right now. And we help companies apply for that grant. We help walk them through the process and actually gather all the paperwork and turn it in for them. So we've seen that be a big, and the 2 dairies that I mentioned, they used the REAP grant a year ago when it was at 25%. So that's a big boon for us. That REAP grant program, I think we're going to see it. We already are seeing a ton of interest because of that amount going from that 25% to 40 or 50%.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned REAP. It is it's a well-known program. It just was not very well funded historically, and now it's fully funded, very generous. It can pay for us. I think you said up to 50% of the project now. So it's a grant, and it really helps with the cost of a solar project. So it's gonna get a business owner's attention when you can get a 50% discount on a project. It's non-trivial. Those applications are quite complicated. But
they are.
I want to talk about solar technology. It sounds like you're partial to SolarEdge and Enphase, and I also want to talk about being an ESOP. I mean, obviously you're pretty steeped in the New Mexico Solar Group world, right? That's pretty much where you've cut your teeth in the industry, and it sounds like you've done very well. It's very impressive that you climbed the ranks and gained the trust of the founder so quickly. And so congratulations for that. Well, do consumers care about technology? Is solar like automobiles where brand names really matter?
And it really depends on the consumer. We definitely have, some of our consumers do really care. They will really get into depth on, comparing panels or comparing, the inversion process, microinverters versus solar edge. So yeah, some customers really do care about that, and so having our sales team know how to explain those differences, and obviously we're always trying to find the best product and the best value to the customer, and the best reliability as far as those products. One thing that I mentioned, Pearl being maybe my favorite product, and the reason I said maybe my favorite product is we have another product that's amazing that somewhat neutralizes that concern for people, and that's SolarInsure. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that product, but what SolarInsure does is it's another third party, and they provide basically they extend the warranties, the manufacturer's warranties out to 30 years. They also extend the warranties. Like we do a 10-year roof penetration warranty as part of our standard contract, but with SolarInsure, it extends the roof penetrations, the solar penetrations that we do when we need a penetrated roof, extends that up to 30 years. But just going back to the technology part, when it extends all the warranties out to 30 years, and not only extending them out to 30 years, but anyone who's tried to use a manufacturer's warranty on maybe a country that has their headquarters, even out of state, let alone across an ocean, knows it can be a nightmare. And so one thing we did early on as a company is we'll handle all the manufacturer's warranties, right? And so the customers don't have to do that. They don't have to call up, when we sold SunPower, they don't have to, and SunPower actually has great warranties, or LG or Hyundai, they don't have to call those corporations to try to make a claim if they have an issue, or SolarEdge or Enphase, right? We will handle them on our end and work with the manufacturers. But the really cool thing is that SolarInsure basically not only extends the manufacturer's warranties, they extend the warranties. They'll handle them themselves, up to 30 years, basically out to 30 years. But the other thing they do is they pay for labor. So if we have to do a truck roll as NM Solar Group, we go out, we have the labor costs, we have the equipment costs, which are usually covered by the manufacturer's warranties. But basically, SolarInsure covers all those costs. And again, that's for 30 years. So it basically makes this really robust warranty that people don't have to worry about. It's the people will still geek out on like which inverter is more efficient, right? And which products are better. But when you have this blanket warranty that's going to make it to where you're going to be taken care of no matter what. A lot of that's people want the best product, they want something that's reliable. But it's like, hey, we have this product where you're taken care of no matter what. Whether or not NM Solar Group, people will have that concern. Well, is your company going to be around? Like, what if you guys go out of business, right? Who's going to service our system? Well, SolarInsure actually, one of their things is that they will source somebody else to handle that if that happened, right? And then there's even another insurance company that insures SolarInsure. So there's these multiple layers of protection that product adds. That kind of neutralizes some of the concerns about technology and what's better than what.
I mean, again, there's a automobile analogy here. Most states require consumers to have insurance on their cars because accidents happen, things break, and it's a great consumer protection across the board. So is that SolarInsure product optional though for consumers, or is every project you do a SolarInsure project?
It's included in every project. It's included in our price.
Got it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. No, I was not familiar with SolarInsure, so that is sounds like a no-brainer, frankly. So we just have a couple minutes left, Nick. So. Sure. Yeah. What else should our listeners know about New Mexico Solar Group? We'll let them, we'll give them links to your website and your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. But what else should our listeners know about New Mexico Solar? What are the 2 or 3 things that really set you apart from other solar companies in your market?
I think, I would take the time to go over the employee-owned part, right? Because we haven't really covered that too much. So again, with our company being employee-owned, Well, one, all of our employees live in our communities. We're very committed to our communities. We give back to our communities. So that's, I guess, so there's two things. We make sure that we have, especially if we're doing significant work in a region, we look at trying to have an actual physical presence there, an office there. Our employees, live in those communities. So we're local and employee owned. And then the employee owner part, the thing I love about it, and the thing that made me really reconsider after I first said, no, I don't think I want to or can be the CEO of NM Solar Group, was when I just realized how great that employee owner mechanism was, in that basically everything that our employees do to grow the company, to add value to the company, to save costs here, or save expenses here, that all goes back into the company, and it goes back to them specifically. And the way it works is it's a retirement account. So we basically put money in retirement accounts. It's a long-term benefit. That's the only thing that's been a little bit of a struggle. It's a really long-term benefit being a retirement account, but it doesn't come out of their paycheck. It's a lot of times retirement accounts, like when I was a school counselor, I think it was anywhere from 10 to 12% of my paycheck went into my retirement account, went to my retirement pension thing with as a school counselor. This is a benefit that our employee owners get without it doesn't come out of their paycheck. It's something that they get as the company grows and grows in value. And we take those profits, we use some of them to reinvest in the company, and we put some of them in the retirement accounts. And when someone leaves the company or retires, they basically get the funds that go into that retirement account without having to pay an extra dime at all. So I love it because it gives back to the people who built the company directly, right? There's not one or two owners that get to keep most of the benefits of everyone else's hard work. Nothing against that model. That can be a great model, and people can make a really good living with that. But all the people's hard work, all of our employee owners' hard work goes back to them in this long-term benefit that doesn't cost them anything extra besides what they put into their job. So it's been a great thing being employee owned for the last 2018 is when it started. So we're just over the 5-year mark here.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I would encourage our listeners to check out ESOP's employee stock ownership programs. It is a tremendous way to add value for your employees, your community, and to build a company that is going to last the test of time and really get the heart and soul of your employees behind the company. Making money is important. You got to be profitable and stay in business. But when only a few owners are going to benefit from the long term of a venture, it really is different than when the employees are those people. So that's a great story. Well, I want to thank you, Nick Kadlec, for coming on the show. Please check out all of our content at cleanpowerhour.com. Give us a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify. Tell a friend or colleague about the Clean Power Hour. Please share this wonderful resource. We bring 2 shows to you week in, week out. We do this for you, solar professionals, energy professionals who are interested in our mission, which is to speed the energy transition. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn or on the contact page at cleanpowerhour.com. With that, Nick, how can our listeners find you?
So I am on LinkedIn. I don't have my handle memorized, to be honest, but the best place to find our company, which I think is the most important, is www.nmsolargroup.com. I am on LinkedIn and Facebook. I think it's Nick Kadlec, CEO, NM Solar Group. But again, our website's the best place for people to find our company, which I think is most important. And thank you so much, Tim, for having me on the program, for reaching out to me and connecting and let me tell our story of NM Solar Group, the employee ownership part, but also just the other parts of our company that set ourselves apart. And just let me tell our story. So thank you, Tim.
Absolutely. I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us. And I'm Tim Montague. Let's grow solar and storage. Take care. The Clean Power Hour is brought to you by CPS America, the maker of North America's #1 3-phase string inverter, with over 6 gigawatts shipped in the U.S. The CPS America product lineup includes 3-phase string inverters ranging from 25 to 275 kW. Their flagship inverter, the CPS 250-275, is designed to work with solar plants ranging from 2 megawatts to 2 gigawatts. The 250-275 pairs well with CPS America's exceptional data communication, controls, and energy storage solutions. Go to chintpowersystems.com to find out more.